The Chicago Bears are undefeated. They're 1-0, despite everybody in football media all across the NFL landscape telling you, the Bears fan, that Chicago had no chance in this game. They did it 19-10 over the San Francisco 49ers at a wet and rainy Soldier Field. So let's have a great Victory Monday here on the Bears Talk podcast. We're going to be joined by Locked On Bears host Lorin Cox on the other side. Let's get after it, Bears fans. It's a Victory Monday. Before I bring Lorin onto the podcast, I have to ask all you Bears talkers out there to make sure you do what every podcast host asks you to do. Go on Apple Podcasts, make sure you subscribe to the show. Head over to YouTube, bang that subscribe button there as well. Leave us your 5-star ratings and reviews wherever you get your podcasts from. You can go over to Twitter, follow Bears Talk at the Bears Talk. You could follow me on Twitter at Bryan Perez NFL. And make sure you're checking out bearstalk.com every single day for the latest news and analysis and my hot takes on the Chicago Bears. Everything is published over there. And you can listen to Locked On Bears every morning as well with this guy who just popped into the YouTube feed. And you're about to hear him now on the podcast as well. Lorin Cox. You could follow him on Twitter at CoxSports1. Lorin, the Bears are undefeated. The Bears pulled off the upset. It's a Victory Monday. How are you feeling, my friend?
You know, it's such a more enjoyable experience when not only do you get that after that game, but then you also see Aaron Rodgers and company struggle quite a bit against the Vikings. It's weird to see the Bears and Vikings tied in first place in the NFC North, but it's makes the weekend and the day that much more fun.
And not only was it awesome, like you said, to see the Packers go down and to have this strange lead in now to Sunday night's game where it's a Bears 1-0 against the Packers 0-1. Aaron Rodgers looks angry and frustrated and disheveled and defeated, whereas Justin Fields is slipping and sliding his way into the locker room like a young kid having fun in the backyard playing the game that we've all grown up loving. And it just feels like these two franchises are going in very different directions. It's only one game. I get it. We're only 1 week into the season. We all know that. But after looking at both offenses, seeing Aaron Rodgers struggle, Christian Watson dropping what should have been a absolute welcome to the NFL 70-yard touchdown moment, what was most telling to me was the way the camera caught Aaron Rodgers' reaction looking over to the sideline as if he was telling Matt LaFleur, I told you, this guy, he's going to drop the ball. I can't count on this guy. He gave one of those looks, those I can't trust this guy looks. Whereas now you see the Chicago Bears, and even though the box score isn't pretty, right? You look at the box score, no wide receiver had more than one catch in this game. David Montgomery led all receivers with 3 catches. So it's not like the Chicago Bears offense is the new Green Bay Packers that we've become used to seeing in the NFC North. But it's just the grit and the determination. And I never felt like the Bears were out of this game, even when it didn't seem like they could move the ball. It didn't feel to me like those Mitch Trubisky Bears, those Matt Nagy offenses. Lorin, your first impression during this game, your first gut feelings, your first reactions when the Bears were kind of stalling on offense, it didn't look pretty. What were you kind of like, oh, here we go again? Or did you have that same sense as I had where it's just going to take a couple drives here, it'll click. This is a different group.
Yeah, I think I'm somewhere in the middle where it's like I wasn't necessarily confident that it was all gonna all of a sudden click to the tune that it did. I mean, I figured they'd get something going. I didn't think they'd do 3 touchdown drives in the second half and win the game, but it felt like they kept running into these walls on first and second down, and they'd end up in these third and longs that are just tough for any quarterback to have to consistently pick up. And then there were a couple of those third and longs where they just handed the ball off or ran screens, and it felt like they were just kind of playing it conservative all the way through it. And there was a lot of that frustration as a result of some of that play calling. But finally, I think what it showed more was a resilience and a determination to sort of stick with what they came there to do, keep trying to grind down the 49ers as much as you can, and understand that that might come with some 3 and outs or some stalled drives and struggling to get the ball past midfield in the first half. But eventually they stuck to it and waited for the 49ers defense to break down a little bit more and start making some of those mistakes that the Bears were then able to fully capitalize on.
I think there's also something to that goes into the offensive line, especially the inexperience. For example, left tackle Braxton Jones making his first start ever. It was the first start of his career going against, at times, Nick Bosa, who is going to be one of the best pure pass rushers he faces all season, arguably and possibly for the rest of his career. I mean, yes, he'll face other elite pass rushers over the next 5 to 10 years, wherever he's playing. Nick Bosa will always be in that upper echelon of guys that he ends up on his resume of guys he's faced. And it seemed like he needed to kind of adjust early on in the game to the speed of the game, to the power of Nick Bosa too. I noticed that was something that especially gave Braxton Jones some trouble, was the power and strength of starting NFL defensive linemen and edge rushers. But once he started settling down, and even maybe it wasn't necessarily Braxton Jones settling down, it was more Justin Fields adjusting to the pass rush that was coming at him, understanding, look, Braxton Jones is not going to be able to give me the kind of pocket that I need to sit back and deliver the ball downfield to Mooney. Justin Fields, leading into the game, said, we got to realize, Braxton Jones is not going to win every rep. And you could see that when the switch went on with Fields, in my opinion, he started realizing the eyes in the back of his head were on at all times. He's spinning out of the pocket. He's making plays outside the pocket. He's taking off and running. And it ultimately led to the 50-yard touchdown pass to Bryan Perez and other opportunities for him to make plays downfield. What was your overall impression of the offensive line, throughout the game, maybe early on, halfway through, toward the end? Your sense of how the tackles played, the Tevin Jenkins, Lucas Patrick drama. What's kind of your takeaways with the guys up front?
Yeah, I hate going into week one with the plan being to rotate the right guard. We kind of got that sense from Matt Eberflus after the game that that's what they had been doing in the week leading up to practice, is just rotating between Lucas Patrick and Tevin Jenkins. So they were fairly intentional about doing so in the game. And it just, to me, that doesn't feel like the best way to instill confidence in whichever one your right guard is going to be. Show them that you stand behind them and that you believe in them and build them up. And then also you're disrupting some of that chemistry and that cohesion of the offensive line. I'm not a fan of that strategy overall. Certainly, I don't think, Tevin Jenkins was lighting it up or anything. He definitely felt like a benching when he first came out because he gave up some of that pressure that led to that first sack right away. But, over the course of the game, right, I thought they did settle in a little bit more. And I think once Justin Fields started, getting out of the pocket more and oftentimes making pass rushers miss and extending those plays and winning with his legs quite a bit more. I just feel like it took some of that pressure off of the offensive line because they kind of realized that, okay, like even if we get beat, the play is not going to be over. The play is not going to be dead. So they don't have to beat themselves up on every single snap. They don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, like any little mistake this offensive line makes is going to be absolutely catastrophic. And like when they see the offense still be able to have that success with them, they can start to build some of those plays and get some of that confidence. And I just feel like over the course of the game, that combined with slowly sort of wearing down the 49ers helped build what looked more and more like a real offense. And I also think it's important to remember like how talented across the board that 49ers defensive line is, and that this Bears offensive line, there will be plenty of other good defensive lines on the schedule, but this one might also be near the top of the list, that it likely can get easier from here in terms of the talent they're going to face up front.
What do you think of the wide receiver play for the Bears? I mean, didn't get much of an opportunity to see Darnell Mooney make plays with the ball in his hand. I don't know if that's a combination of Justin Fields not having enough time to make plays downfield. The weather was really not conducive to throwing the ball the way that Mooney probably needs an offense to be geared in his direction. But we did see kind of the fruit of the offseason seeds that Ryan Poles planted with guys like Equanimous St. Brown making the most of his moment. Byron Pringle making the most of his moment. Dante Pettis making the most of his moment. And it's a combination of guys that maybe any one of them individually doesn't make anybody stop and say, wow, that's a really good player. But the collection of these players, almost like the old cartoon Voltron. You kind of put all these pieces together and they turn into something that actually resembles a competent passing game. What was your takeaways today from the skill position players, specifically at wide receiver? I mean, Cole Kmet was basically invisible. I don't know. I'm a little surprised by that because a game like this, something that you would think was a day that you would think would be more about a short passing attack, get the ball off quickly, especially because of the pass rush, maybe some tight end screens, something that would have been able to get Cole Kmet more involved. I don't even think he had a catch. I think he was targeted 4 times, 0 catches. So let's talk about the receivers, your takeaways there, and what do you think was wrong or what happened with Cole Kmet and his disappearance today?
Yeah, I'm trying not to read too much into like, Mooney only having 1 catch and Kmet only having 0, because I mean the Bears only completed 8 passes, right? Like there just weren't a lot of passes to go around. And it's definitely notable that 3 or 4 of them went to running backs and each receiver only got 1 catch across the board. Like, yeah, that distribution is interesting to me, but I do feel like 8 completions is such a small sample size to judge, exactly how this offense is going to operate. But I think to the individual efforts of all of them, right? Like people are going to point out, I'm sure we'll hear it in the coming week here that, oh, well, Justin Fields only had those deep touchdowns because the coverage was so bad, and that coverage bust on Dante Pettis was wide open and untouched, and Equanimeous St. Brown kind of slipped behind the defense, and even Byron Pringle didn't really have a defender in the immediate vicinity of him too. So like, of course, that's going to open up a lot of the criticism for Fields. But I think at the very least, Fields deserves a lot of credit for still being able to find them. On a lot of those plays, like he has to still get out of the pocket, has to scan the field and find that open receiver later in the play. It's not like it's always snaps the ball, looks, and receiver is just completely uncovered, wide open. Pringle was close to that, but with St. Brown and with Pettis, like he had to go through a full progression. He had to find out where that was going to be in the play, and then notice that they were open, and then get the ball to them still. And it's not as simple as just like you or me dropping back to pass. Wouldn't necessarily have been able to find even a wide open receiver like that. You can leave it up as criticism of it didn't ask Dante Pettis to be a great route runner. It didn't ask Equanimeous St. Brown to be a great route runner. But how about some of the blocking that Equanimeous St. Brown had, like after the catch on the Dante Pettis play? I mean, he was the last block that sprung Pettis into the end zone. So I thought like it was the pieces coming together and each guy just doing enough of their own part to look like enough of an offense to win in a shitty, rainy, cold Soldier Field game.
And remember something else. I mean, we've seen a lot of great quarterbacks in NFL history that have turned players who are not the best route runners, not the most elite or physically gifted players, into quality, productive, high-level receivers. And the Dante Pettis play that you're referring to, yeah, he didn't have to do anything necessarily special. He did have to kind of have field awareness and stay where he was in that wide open area of the field. But that moment doesn't happen unless Justin Fields or an athlete like Justin Fields is playing quarterback. So while Dante Pettis didn't necessarily have to do anything special to get open, the Bears offense needed a special element in order for that moment to actually occur. So, yeah, any quarterback in the league can throw a ball from where Justin Fields threw it to a wide open Dante Pettis where Dante Pettis was standing. But to get from the snap to that release point moment required a special player like Justin Fields to have it happen. And Dante Pettis was the beneficiary of that. We've seen a lot of receivers who were beneficiaries of special moments from Tom Brady, a lot of receivers who were beneficiaries, special moments from Peyton Manning. The list goes on and on. Patrick Mahomes has made a lot of guys look really good who probably wouldn't have had the same box score if it wasn't for Patrick Mahomes doing some razzle dazzle, funky stuff to make the plays happen. Justin Fields had a few of those moments in Sunday's win. Even that little dump off he had to David Montgomery. I don't know how he squeezed the ball underhand, whatever he did through the defensive line. It was a nominal play. It didn't have any impact on the game, but there are little breadcrumbs being left by Justin Fields in his first start of 2022 that shows this guy has something special. And the Dante Pettis play isn't the result of a special wide receiver making an incredible play after the catch, which is where I think you can then go after the quarterback and be like, well, he threw for 340 yards, but 74 of them came on a wide receiver screen to wide receiver X, who made 6 guys miss and scored a touchdown, inflated box score. That 52-yard touchdown, however long it was all because of Justin Fields. And that's what Bears fans have to be happy about today, is that even the Dante Pettis pass, that was a perfectly thrown ball from the pocket that he laced right over the shoulder of Dante Pettis, which how many times, Lorin, have Bears fans watched Mitch Trubisky struggle to make a throw like that? Or quarterbacks before Mitch Trubisky, with the exception of probably Jay Cutler, who's a very good, accurate passer. We have seen our fair share of quarterbacks who would not be able to make that throw. So don't dismiss the routine throw that's perfectly handled by Fields as, well, it's just routine. That's progress in Chicago. And then you stack on top of that a special play like he had to Dante Pettis. Now you have a different level of player who has never been in these Bears colors ever before. And look, Vegas expected the Bears to lose by a touchdown. That website, NFLPickWatch.com, has all these experts enter their picks on the website. When I last checked, when I wrote an article for Bears Talk, 95% of people who submitted their picks picked the 49ers. So the fact that Justin Fields, even on just 8 completions and a handful of runs, was able to put up enough points, 19 points, to win that game was special. But he got some help from his defense, right? So why don't we flip to that side of the ball?
I was going to say real quick, one of the things that stood out to me is like, yeah, we're going to hear people point to Justin Fields' interception, right? As that looked like a bad. I mean, it was a bad read.
It was bad. Yeah, it was bad.
But
quarterbacks make bad throws, though.
Well, and no, but the thing is that I think we saw from that interception to the second half, he adjusted and learned throughout the game. There's one of the things he said after the game was that he described this 49ers defense. I don't remember the phrase he used, but he was saying how like the defense is following his eyes, and as soon as like he goes to a direction, everyone in the defense just attacks that direction. They look for the quarterback's eyes, and then they sort of not fully leave their responsibilities, but go that way. And he said, like, on that interception play, he was trying to lead the linebacker away, but in trying to lead the linebacker off, he brought the safety in and then threw it back the direction where the safety was coming into. But then I think that sticks in his mind when he realizes that mistake on that interception. So when you get to the Dante Pettis play, he's rolling to his left and he realizes, okay, I scrambled to my left. I've been looking left this whole play. If I know that the defense is following my eyes the way they did on that interception, then I know this whole defense has followed me left. So then if I look right, oh, there's a wide open Dante Pettis because I knew that the defense would be following me because I learned from that in my first interception. And same thing with like, the equanimous St. Brown play when he's looking right and he's letting St. Brown kind of get deep a little bit more middle of the field, because he knows he's going to be breaking to the outside. Like I just think that interception throughout the game, like he learned from the mistake he made on that play. And you could see that growth and understanding of what the defense was doing that led him to a mistake the first time that he could then take advantage of on subsequent deep throws.
And I mean, think about it. It's what, his 11th start in the NFL?
Yeah.
When he started 10 games last year? I mean, that's incredible growth and maturation and development and evolution for a player who is still so young, playing a position that takes so much time and experience at the pro level to become the best version of who you're going to be. So if it takes an interception or 2 or 15 or 18 or 20 interceptions this year for Justin Fields to keep having these learning lessons like you just really articulately broke down, I'll take it, right? Because what we saw happen after he learned from that mistake was effective, quality quarterbacking in conditions that were suboptimal that resulted in enough points to be a very good football team. At least we're being led to believe they're a very good football team. I think there is, I don't want to be a wet blanket, but I don't know if today, well, you're listening to this Monday, so if Sunday was as big of an upset, if we'll view it as big of an upset 4 or 5 weeks from now as we're looking at right now. When I wrote on BearsTalk.com my predictions for the game, I picked the Bears to win. And I'm very honest with my predictions. I'm not going to pick the Bears to win because I have a Justin Fields t-shirt jersey. I manage BearsTalk.com, and I've been a Bears fan since I was 5 years old. That doesn't make me pick the Bears. I pick who I really think is going to win the game based on honest assessment of the teams. And while it's true the 49ers have maybe higher level talent, I'm not a guy who believes in Trey Lance at all. I didn't believe in him as a draft prospect, and I don't believe he's an upgrade from Jimmy Garoppolo. And I certainly don't think he's as good as Justin Fields. So playing at home with what, in my opinion, is a much more talented quarterback with a team playing for a coach that you could see they love this guy and they're buying into his philosophy. I felt like Trey Lance was kind of walking into a fire pit and was going to have a problem. And it looked at times like he had a chance to make something happen. But I don't know, Lorin, what was your takeaways from when the 49ers had the ball, either standouts on the Bears offense, and we can even spend a little time on Trey Lance, since he's going to be a very big point of discussion across the league, at least over the next few weeks. Games like today, to me, he stacks a couple of games like this together, and you're going to see the calls for Jimmy Garoppolo get louder and louder and louder. At least that's my takeaway from it. What did you see today or
Yeah,
yesterday?
I felt like
Look, for full disclosure, we're obviously recording this on Sunday night, so I'm going to be saying today, yesterday, interchangeably for the next half hour.
the secret is to just always say the day of the week. Don't use today, or just always say Sunday or Monday. But as far as Trey Lance goes, like the concern for me, if I was a 49ers fan, is like I felt like Kyle Shanahan as a play caller pulled out a lot of the stops to try and make it as easy as possible for Trey Lance. They did a bunch of different things offensively that felt really creative and was quite effective at times. I mean, the quarterback power runs where they loaded up like 3 tight ends on the right side of the field and pulled a guard and like just lined up for easy. It's easy blocks, and Trey Lance could run for 10 yards almost untouched a few of those times. Or all the different ways they used Deebo Samuel to take some of the pressure off of Trey Lance. They ran the ball. I mean, I know they lost Elijah Mitchell, and I think that really hurt a lot of what they wanted to do offensively, but still at the same time, they were able to get a ground game going, and just had to be more the Deebo Samuel ground game. But Mitchell was getting like almost 7 a carry. Deebo Samuel was getting over 6, and Wilson was not nearly as effective. But it all felt like they were pulling out all these different plays to like run the ball well and take the pressure off of Trey Lance. And then like when Trey Lance had to throw, it just wasn't always there. Like his big completions, like they had a couple of deep crossing routes where the receiver got way out past Kindle Vildor. There was one where Kyler Gordon was a little bit slow and trailing, but like other than a couple of more clear coverage mistakes from the Bears, like Trey Lance had that one like fire over the middle of the field on a huge third down. Like that was the one play that stood out to me. It was like, okay, maybe there's still something there for him, but otherwise, I don't know. It just felt like they were helping him in as many ways as they could, and it just wasn't always happening from, especially down the stretch.
We try to be as fair as possible. And when it's a goddamn monsoon, it's probably the worst weather conditions to evaluate any quarterback, regardless of their level of experience, history of success. That's besides like unbelievable wind, that kind of a downpour is probably the most challenging conditions for a quarterback who Trey Lance before the game in the days leading up to it admitted like he never plays in rain. Like he played in snow in high school and in North Dakota State. It was in a dome. So he didn't have a lot of experience playing the position in the elements. And it didn't just rain. I mean, Soldier Field, I think at one point, Adam Johns tweeted out a picture saying it was Soldier Pond. I mean, it literally looked like it was underwater.
Yeah.
So to try to, everything gets affected. The receiver's timing, running the routes, the ball itself. So I'm sure better days are ahead for Trey Lance, but the Bears managed to do enough even in the pass rush. How about the rookie 5th-round pick from Miami of Ohio, Dominique Robinson, stepping up and having 1.5 sacks, he led the team in sacks, 7 tackles, second most behind Roquan Smith. Like, where did this come from? I thought he was a developmental pass rusher with upside who we were going to see probably play a bigger role in 2023, a rotational guy in 2022. He looked like he's got something, Lorin. Like the Bears might have gotten another gem. All this time we've been focusing on Braxton Jones as the 5th-round pick, who might be that diamond that Ryan Poles uncovered on day 3 of the draft. I think his 5th-round classmate could actually be that guy, especially with such an opportunity that's there for him. I mean, they have Robert Quinn, who's obviously the guy. Muhammad is a player. Travis Gibson's a player. But if you're putting up 1.5 sacks in your NFL debut, against a 49ers team that's got a pretty good set of tackles, right? Trent Williams is arguably one of the best. McGlinchey isn't all that bad. And you're putting up 1.5 sacks in your NFL debut. That tells me you got a little something. Was he a pleasant surprise? Is this something you expected from him? And what do you think the rotation at edge rusher is going to look like moving forward now after that game?
Definitely far exceeded my expectations. We thought he'd get some snaps in and maybe get a surprise pass rush here or there that stood out, but certainly not getting to the quarterback twice. And like that first sack, I mean, just pulled him down with one arm from behind. I mean, that was just super, super impressive in the strength. And I think it reminded me, not exactly skill set wise, but just like the feeling it gave me. It reminded me a little bit of rookie Leonard Floyd in the sense that it's just like he doesn't have a robust set of pass rush moves, but he is athletic and quick and just hustles really hard and just seems like he's got the motor that, like, when he's on the field, he's excited to be on the field and is outworking everybody in terms of just how much he's working his hands and his legs and keeping things turning and playing through the end of the play. Because, like, the second one is Trey Lance stepping up into a pocket and Dominic Robinson just kind of getting around to him because he just kept fighting through. Like, when he beat McGlinchey to the inside on the first sack, it's just kind of a simple, gets his hands in and works inside. Like, I think over time, opposing offensive lines will finally have some tape on him and can adjust, and we'll see if he can sort of make that next step in his development. But like for now, he's athletic enough and hustles it enough and has that sort of like knack for the football that I think Leonard Floyd had early in his career, that he can make these types of splash kind of surprise plays that you're not expecting, because the offensive line is focused on, okay, where's Robert Quinn? And some of the interior pass rushes was getting some consistent pressure, even if they weren't getting home. And it allowed Robinson to just kind of be the one that sneaks in there and ends up getting sort of reaping the rewards from everyone else. And if a 5th round rookie can give me a similar just feeling to what we saw from a 1st round rookie 5 years ago or whatever it's been, that's pretty darn good for Ryan Poles.
I mean, it's either a really sad assessment of Leonard Floyd's era in Chicago, that he played more like a 5th rounder than a 1st rounder. Well, let's look at the optimistic view and say Robinson is playing like a much earlier round pick than the 5th rounder that he ultimately was. I think what surprised me most about him was the fact that he played stronger than I expected.
Yeah.
He wasn't really pushed around. And when you take a guy whose background has offense, wide receiver in his background, and is pretty new to playing defense, and especially the at along the edge, I expected the strength to be the biggest issue. He obviously has the athleticism and quickness to be a successful pass rusher if everything else develops around that athletic ability. And one of those issues that I thought he was going to need to work through was strength. I mean, look, this is after a first watch. We're going to go back and look at the film again, to break into some analytics, see what outlets like Pro Football Focus, how they graded some of these guys. We'll have complete reviews and recaps of those numbers and data on later episodes this week. But from a first watch, Dominique Robinson looked like a guy who was able to stand his ground, was able to win with a combination of athletic ability and power. Maybe not the most refined, advanced pass rush moves like you explained, but there's something to be said, Lorin, about hustle, playing through the whistle. That's what Matt Eberflus has been preaching, that high level of intensity throughout training camp. And it felt like if you could take one player to kind of put up on a as an example on a slideshow and say, this is a guy who represents the hits philosophy that Eberflus has been preaching. This is a guy who, if you want to see it in action, Dominique Robinson looked the part of a guy who is going to lay it all out on the grass, right? Like Eberflus likes to talk about being out on the grass. I think Robinson made that statement today, and he wasn't the only rookie to me that impressed. Jaquan Brisker, I didn't think he played a great game. I thought there were some issues, again, on first watch, where some of these plays that got over his head in coverage, I want to see exactly what went wrong there. Mm-hmm. I thought also some tackles that he could have made that were missed. But you cannot teach a guy the dog, right? Being aggressive, wanting to be a violent player. And Jaquan Brisker is that guy. He clearly is a player who is going to be bringing a different level of intensity to the back end, and combined with Eddie Jackson, who back on the board with an interception, that more, in my opinion, more of a finesse athlete at safety. What was your week 1 takeaway from this starting tandem and the back end of Jackson and Brisker that to me looks like it's got so much upside. It could be one of the best safety duos in the NFC a year or two from now.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's still got to come together there, right? Like it was exactly what we were hoping to see, like flashes of, and they did for the most part. Like there weren't big plays that got behind them, right? It was always behind the underneath coverage, more in that intermediate area, but you didn't really see like sometimes last year there were breakdowns, right, where the receiver would even get beyond the safeties, and the safeties would be out of positions, and that was when things really got catastrophic. But it felt like the damage was always kept much more, at least in front of them, even if it's behind that initial underneath level of coverage. I liked Brisker's physicality in there. Of course, the hit that at first we thought forced the fumble, but Jalen Johnson was the one who got to punch it. But
That was an amazing. That was I can watch that replay 100 times. I mean, that was like chef's kiss,
like
perfect peanut punch. It was the perfect jab right on the ball. Debo had no clue Jalen Johnson was going to unleash that. And that is something that felt so much like the old school Lovie Smith Bears when Charles Tillman was the master of the peanut punch. And to see that Jalen Johnson, like he could have just went in and tried to make a tackle. He went right for the ball and it worked to perfection. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Continue.
No, but that was actually where I was getting to, where it's like, I think Jalen Johnson only feels comfortable going for the punch there because he sees Brisker's coming to lay the wood. Like he can see that coming, and but it's like, okay, I don't have to be the one to get this receiver down just yet. I can at least do the punch first and then see if I need to make the tackle after that if something terrible goes wrong. But like he could make that sort of quick calculated decision because he knows that heat-seeking missile is coming from the strong safety position, and he knows there's going to be some kind of big contact there that he can, even though Brisker didn't get there first necessarily, it wasn't hold him up while the other guy punches. I think there was that level of understanding of those two guys being in tandem on how that was supposed to work on that play. Plus there was a big play in the goal line or in the red zone where Brisker knifed into the backfield, had a big tackle for loss on second or third and goal in there. And I think it's coming together for him. There's going to be rookie mistakes, and we saw some of those in coverage, especially kind of dropping back. But in the box, I think he's everything you signed up for. And I think he made a big difference in run defense too, when they were struggling to get linebackers free on blocks getting up to the second level, but he could be that sort of extra linebacker type in the box when they were going in the nickel package. And I think there's a lot to like there. And of course, the fumble recovery and some of the big hits, I think, helped shape more of that mystique around what kind of physical player he can be.
And, it's when you look at him as a player, like today, I was really appreciating not only his approach to the game and his effectiveness as a player, but he's got a really unique body type too for a safety with the length. And he's broader than I even from the I don't know, maybe it's just the optics of preseason versus regular season and the cameras that they use. But he to me looks like he could be a really unique defensive weapon because of not only what's going on upstairs and what drives him to be great, and not only his physical ability as a football player, as a hitter, as a tackler, even in coverage, but even just the traits he was blessed with at birth, his length and his overall body, his frame. He's going to be the kind of guy who, again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse and say, look, Justin Fields had some magical plays at quarterback, and Dominique Robinson is coming off the edge with 1.5 sacks, 5th round gem, and we got a kid from the 2nd round in Jaquan Brisker who not only plays like a possible unicorn type safety, but even looks like one. It was a really, really fun week 1. Lorin, if there was 1 or 2 things that you're going to tell Bears fans to really be happy about after this game, and maybe 1 or 2 things that you think pump your brakes just a little bit as we kind of get into this next few days. We're in Packers week over the next couple of days. What should Bears fans be super excited about after defeating the 49ers in week 1? And what should we be looking at as a maybe point of emphasis leading into the Packers game that needs to be cleaned up?
I think the number one thing that I take away to be excited about is the way that they kept fighting and had that resilience of like, I just felt like so often in the Matt Nagy era, it's like they get off to a slow start and it becomes very difficult to catch back up. That, if they get to halftime down 10-0, like this, like they tend to then come out flat in the second half again, and maybe they'll get a touchdown drive in there and then maybe a late touchdown drive to make the final score look closer than it actually was. But you never really felt like the Bears were climbing back into games. And yet, like in this one, it was like they came out at halftime and the score was still 0-0, and they always felt like they were in it. And to be able to kind of keep pushing through and keep trusting how that process was going to play out, and kind of let the 49ers start making some mistakes after they were a little bit closer to flawless in that first half. I just thought the way they stuck with it and the way that the energy was kept up, like you didn't see guys mailing it in or giving up or anything like that. I just think it spoke to like sort of the identity, the resilience, the chemistry of this team, and buying into the coach. Like a lot of that sounds, it's not measurable and it sounds all nice on paper, but like it really did manifest itself in the way they kept sticking through that game in rainy conditions as well, that could demotivate players and make them feel like they're getting wet and cold and getting their butts kicked and all that stuff. Like none of that. They kept fighting through, and players were learning as the game went on and kind of settled into it a little bit more. Really encouraged by that they can take on all sorts of circumstances and be able to sort of fall back on that stuff. As far as the concern goes, I still think this offensive line is going to continue to be a problem. Like, yes, Justin Fields overcame it and made some heroic plays by getting out of the pocket, but you don't want to have that be your whole offense. And it felt like that had to be the Bears' whole offense, was Fields kind of single-handedly doing better than his offensive line could possibly do. And I'm concerned that that's going to limit their ability to be as dynamic as they can be. I mean, when David Montgomery averages 1.5 yards per carry on 17 carries, like, yeah, Herbert was able to find some more space, but it was a smaller sample size there. And there are different types of backs in some different situations in the game, but like they could not run the ball as consistently as I'm sure they wanted to. It was written on the little card that Matt Eberflus was holding during the game. There was a camera shot of it in the first quarter. It said Q1, and then all caps said like run the ball or something. Like that was clearly what they want to do. And I'm still a little bit concerned about that group up front being able to be consistent enough for them to succeed. But at the same time, 1 week, really good 49ers defense, terrible field conditions, and more time for this group to sort of learn and grow. Because there have been plenty of seasons where we see a Bears offensive line get better as the year goes on, as they just get used to playing with each other and get used to the offense.
I think you're spot on. There's no reason to come out of a upset victory in week one emphasizing things that are bad or negative. But it's also just impossible to ignore the concerns that were created in week one with the offensive line. There's just no two ways around it. I don't know if Riley Reif needs to be considered for a starting job as a veteran stabilizing presence, who you bench, who you put him in over. I don't know. Lucas Patrick needs to get healthy and get back to playing center, and we need to get this offensive line crystallized around that pivot point. But at the end of the day, Justin Fields, you want him to be healthy for 17 games. And you don't want him taking some of the hits that he did take early in the game, even though he adjusted and made magic happen. So I agree with you that the offensive line is that one issue that still makes it feel a little bit like it's an incomplete, unwhole victory. I mean, just to kind of circle back to the running backs for a minute. I mean, do you think there's a chance we could have the first step into now a controversy, for lack of a better term, in terms of who really is the better fit for the starting running back role? Because honestly, Khalil Herbert just looked like the more effective guy to me today. He's north-south, no nonsense. He gets upfield. He's got that giddy up. He's got some juice. He seems like 10 yards. He's gone in a dart, and just seemed like a better fit for what the offense maybe just needed today. Maybe it just worked better today, but it's kind of worked last year too. And as much as I love David Montgomery as a player, as a person, as like that heartbeat of an offense, are we starting to see like the difference between a running back who can get north-south in this offensive system, one cut, get upfield, has the juice for the 10 yards, versus a running back like Montgomery who can do that, but he's also a little bit more of that dancer at times. Do you think we're going to see a little bit of an issue here with the Herbert Montgomery timeshare as we get into week 2, 3, and beyond?
Yeah, I was carefully kind of tracking throughout the game, how their carries would go, especially when Herbert started having a lot more success. Yeah, I was wondering if those would start equaling out. But I mean, of course, the split finished like 17-9 or 17-8. So they still, despite the difference in production, they still pretty well favored Montgomery more or less. But looking back through the game book, It looks like it was a pretty much alternating by drives. It wasn't like every other drive, but it would be like Montgomery, Montgomery, Herbert, Montgomery, Montgomery, Herbert. And then like on the longest drive, like the long drive before the end of the half, they ended up starting with Herbert and then going to Montgomery because they got to be like 10, 12 plays on the drive. But like for the most part, they were sort of alternating that way, whether that's just giving David Montgomery a breather or whether that's super intentional in how often they're trying to deliver both players. Matt,
That also does seem like kind of a standard split for teams that have committee backfields or almost near committee backfields. It seems like the guy goes in for 2, the backup comes in for 1 in terms of drives. They used to do that back with was it the Cedric Benson, Thomas Jones era? There was the Matt Forte was here with when Matt Forte was a rookie. I don't know if Thomas Jones was still here, but they would do the same thing. There would be 2 guys, 2 drives for the starter, then the backup, the guy that's kind of challenging, comes in for 1 drive. And that is usually like the first sign of a changing of the guard, especially like if you think about it, Dave Montgomery's on an expiring contract. They got Khalil Herbert locked up for another, 2 years? So I don't know, man. It's going to come down to who's produces. And in week 1, the nod clearly, in my opinion, goes to Khalil Herbert. Whereas David Montgomery, he's not going to be suddenly replaced in the second game of the year of Sunday Night Football against the Packers. They're going to want all hands on deck. But if David Montgomery is outplayed again by Khalil Herbert against the Packers in what is probably going to be, I don't know if you want to call it a statement game. I don't know what term you want to use for the Matt Eberflus, Justin Fields era of Bears football, kind of like the kickoff game for the era of this new era of Bears football. If Khalil Herbert somehow is critical to the Bears beating the Packers, maybe he has 5 or 6 fewer carries than Montgomery, but has 30 yards more, has the touchdown, makes a bigger play in the passing game, then you're going to see this horse race, the Herbert, start lapping Montgomery. I hate to say it because I'm a Montgomery guy. I'm a Bears guy first, so if Herbert's better for the team, it's better for all of us. But I think we may have just seen the first round of this fight happen against the 49ers, because when the Bears coaches look at that tape and they see what drives had more sustainability, what running back was in the game, I have to go back and watch the tape again, but it just seemed like the offense was more effective when Herbert was in. We'll find out in more detail with the analytics and whatnot over the next couple of days. Lorin, you excited for Packers week?
Always. I already was getting the trash talk going earlier with everyone who Bears fans loves on Twitter, Peter Bukowski. So we're getting ready for it over here.
He's the Packers writer every Bears fan absolutely loves to hate. So, Lorin, make sure you tell everybody, where can they find you, listen to you, get all your work over the next couple of days?
Of course, you can find that trash talk with Peter Bukowski on Twitter at Cox Sports 1, and you can hear me 5 days a week on the Locked On Bears podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course, also on YouTube.
So make sure you subscribe to Lorin's podcast. Make sure you head over to Apple Podcasts, subscribe to ours. Go to YouTube, subscribe to our channel, The Bears Talk. Make sure you go to bearstalk.com, sign up for a free membership, join the Bears Talk social network where you can talk with other Bears fans. You can write articles for bearstalk.com. It's a lot of fun. Now that the season's here, there's no shortage of content. Head over to Twitter. Make sure you're following me at Bryan Perez NFL. But most importantly, Bears fans, enjoy the moment. Enjoy being undefeated. Enjoy being 1-0 and being able to read all the articles over the next couple of days where all the experts have to backpedal, where all the people who told you how big of a blowout and how bad the Bears are, all this negativity about the Chicago Bears. Enjoy the next 48 hours where they all have to explain why the Bears maybe won as a fluke, why this is suddenly such a surprise. You guys and gals out there all know what I know. This Bears football team is different. This quarterback is different. It's going to be a season with some ups and some downs. And right now we're on the ups. Let's hope it continues for another week. And let's hope you come right back. The next time we're up, we'll be back on with another show, probably Wednesday or Thursday this week. Make sure you're subscribed so you get the next episode of the Bears Talk podcast. Bear down.